They say some dolls are only toys, lifeless, harmless. But the doll in this story was different. Her glass eyes never seemed to close, and every night at the stroke of midnight, something moved. Was it a trick of the shadows, or was she waking up? This is the story of the haunted doll, and the dreams she forced me to enter. I don't remember lying down to sleep, but I remember opening my eyes and finding myself inside a hallway. It stretched endlessly, walls sweating with dark moisture, floorboards swollen and groaning under my steps. The further I walked, the more I realized the echo of my footsteps wasn't alone. It came twice, always twice, as though someone or something was right behind me. And then I saw it, a small figure, a doll, standing upright in the distance, waiting. I don't remember how long I stood frozen in that hallway, staring at the little shape in the distance. My breath fogged the air, though the hallway wasn't cold. Each exhale seemed louder than it should have been, bouncing back from the walls in a rhythm that didn't belong to me. Something was copying me, mimicking my sounds with just the faintest delay, as though mocking me from the shadows. I forced myself to take a step forward. The boards groaned beneath my weight, but the second echo was sharper, heavier. My throat tightened. I didn't dare turn around. A light above me sputtered and flickered, and for a split second, the entire corridor went black. When the glow returned, the doll was closer. Not by much, but enough for me to know it hadn't walked. It had simply appeared there. Its porcelain face gleamed with a faint shine, the way glass catches the moonlight. One of its eyes seemed cracked, a jagged line running down through the pupil like a broken mirror. Its lips were painted into a smile, but the paint had chipped away in places, giving the impression of teeth hiding just beneath. The longer I looked, the more I was convinced its head tilted slightly, acknowledging me. I told myself it wasn't real. It was a dream, just a dream, but my body didn't care about logic. My palms were wet, my heart beating hard enough to ache. When I swallowed, I could hear the gulp travel down my throat. The doll remained still, its tiny hands at its sides. I felt its presence filled the hallway like smoke, invisible but suffocating. I tried to call out, just to hear my own voice, to prove I was still in control. But when I opened my mouth, no sound came. My voice was gone. Silence pressed against my ears, the kind of silence that ice and tea, empty but alive, thick with whispers too faint to make out. I could swear one of those whispers belonged to me, repeating words I had never spoken aloud. The walls seemed to stretch further the closer I moved. It was as if the hallway itself was playing with me, refusing to let me reach the doll. My steps grew slower, heavier, though I didn't feel tired. It was as if the ground wanted to keep me there, trapping me in an endless loop of fear. I stopped moving. The doll was no longer in the same place. It had shifted again, suddenly perched on a crooked wooden chair that hadn't been there before. Its head leaned to one side, like it was curious, studying me the way a child studies an insect crawling on the floor. I wanted to scream, to run, but the weight of the air pressed me into place. The light above gave one final flicker and burned out. Darkness swallowed everything. My chest tightened as I stumbled forward blindly, arms stretched in front of me, desperate to feel anything that wasn't emptiness. The floor beneath me thudded with steps, not my own, faster now, chasing me. And then, from the blackness, two small porcelain hands reached out, pale as bone, and clapped together once. The sound cracked through the darkness like lightning, and in that split second of echo, I could see its face inches from mine. Cracked eyes stared directly into me, and the painted smile had widened just enough to reveal something sharp hidden underneath. I staggered back, but the hallway twisted. It wasn't a straight path anymore. It was bending, warping, walls leaning inward, dripping thick moisture that reeked of rust and rot. My back hit the wall, and when I turned to push away from it, I realized the texture wasn't plaster at all. It pulsed. It breathed. The hallway itself was alive, and the doll was the only thing not moving in that nightmare. In the hallway, there was only one door, a black door. It shouldn't have been there. No frame, no seams, no handle. But the doll lifted its porcelain hand and pointed. Against my will, I opened it. The air inside was colder than death, and behind that door was a room I recognized. My childhood bedroom. Only, not the way I remembered it. The room looked familiar at first glance, but something inside me knew it wasn't real. The wallpaper was peeling, edges curling like dried skin. The floor was covered in a thin layer of dust that muffled my steps, though no dust had ever settled in my real bedroom. My old bed stood in the corner, but the sheets were wrong. They were too small, tucked so tightly that the mattress bulged upward as if something beneath it was trying to push out. I felt myself drawn toward the bed, though every instinct screamed not to get closer. The air in the room grew heavier the further I walked, each breath colder than the last. My fingers brushed against the nightstand, the same one I had as a child, except it was cracked open and inside were things that didn't belong to me. A set of glass eyes, neatly arranged in a line, small teeth, human teeth, resting in a velvet box. And a ribbon I remembered losing when I was 8 years old, stained a dark brown. The window on the far side was shut tight, but I could hear a faint knocking sound. Tap, tap, tap. The glass trembled in rhythm, as if tiny hands on the other side were begging to be let in. I moved closer, unable to stop myself. In the dim light, I saw the impression of fingers pressing outward against the glass. They dragged slowly down, leaving streaks like condensation, though no moisture should have been there. Behind me, the bed springs groaned. I froze, my body stiff. Something was shifting under the sheets. The lump in the mattress rose higher, moving slowly toward the edge, as though crawling beneath the fabric. Kai wanted to back away, but my legs felt locked. The sound of fabric stretching filled the air, and then the mattress gave a sudden jolt, as if something inside had struck upward. The doll was no longer in the hallway. She sat now on the desk chair, her small body propped up unnaturally straight. Her head tilted just slightly too far to the side. In the silence, I could swear I heard a faint ticking sound coming from her chest, like the winding of a clock. Her eyes gleamed, reflecting a light that didn't exist in the room. I turned back to the bed, and the sheet was no longer smooth. The shape beneath it had formed into the outline of a body, small, childlike. I could see the curve of a head, the angles of arms folded across the chest. My stomach twisted because I recognized it. The size, the posture. It was me. It was my body lying there under the sheet. The knocking on the window grew louder, faster, until it was a frantic pounding. The glass trembled so hard I thought it would shatter, but I couldn't look away from the bed. The sheet began to sink, as though the figure beneath it was dissolving into the mattress, swallowed whole. In its place, the blanket went flat, but the impression of a face pressed upward from beneath the fabric, mouth open in a silent scream. I stumbled backward, hitting the doorframe, desperate to get out. But the doorway I had entered through was gone. In its place was only more wall, peeling, and damp. The doll remained on the chair, her head now straight, her cracked eye staring at me, her small porcelain hand lifted and pointed toward the bed. The blanket shifted once more, the face beneath stretching toward me, mouth opening wider until the fabric tore. From inside that tear, I saw darkness. Not the absence of light, but something deeper. A void that pulled at me, tugging at my breath, my thoughts, my very being. I wanted to scream, but again, no sound came out. The pounding at the window stopped, replaced by the slow, dragging sound of nails scraping against the glass. The air was freezing now, each inhale burning my chest like ice. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft and trembling, coming from the bed. It was my own voice, speaking words I couldn't understand, broken syllables strung together like a language I had forgotten. The doll's head turned slightly toward the sound, and for the first time her painted smile shifted. The corners of her lips cracked open wider, and the faintest trace of breath escaped, carrying with it the scent of earth and rot. She was sitting on my bed, not the doll, but me, my reflection, my double, staring with wide, glassy eyes. Her lips moved before mine could. She whispered things I had never said aloud. Okay, my secrets, my fears. And then she smiled. That's when I saw it. Her smile was too wide. Porcelain teeth glimmering under the flickering light. She didn't blink, not once. Her eyes were wide and unbroken, like two frozen marbles locked on mine. I felt this strange sensation of being emptied out, as though every memory, every secret thought I had ever carried was leaking from me into her. My chest tightened with the realization that she was repeating me. She was speaking ahead of me, predicting my thoughts before I could even form them. Her head tilted in a jerky motion, and the sound of cracking bone filled the silence. I stepped back, but she mirrored me, sliding off the bed in the same movement, her bare feet making no sound against the floor. I watched in horror as her smile widened further, stretching beyond what flesh should allow. I wanted to run, but my legs trembled, heavy with the weight of the dream. She raised her hand, and for a moment I thought she was reaching out to me. But no, she was pointing directly at the doll, who now sat neatly on the pillow, its cracked eye watching with almost maternal patience. The double glanced back at it, then turned to me again, whispering in a voice too soft to carry, but somehow lodged inside my skull. I couldn't understand the words, not fully, but they sounded familiar. They sounded like the prayers my mother used to whisper to me when I was a child, except twisted, warped, as though the syllables had been fed through teeth and spit back out. The cadence was the same, but every word made my skin crawl. Then she lunged. Not fast, not violent, but sudden enough that I stumbled backward against the desk. She didn't touch me. She only stood inches away, her face level with mine. The glassy stare bore into me, and I realized the truth. This wasn't just a copy. This thing had taken pieces of me, stolen fragments of my mind and flesh to build itself. It was me, but wrong, incomplete, desperate to finish. Her hand touched my face, cold and hard, not skin, but porcelain. My chest seized as I realized her hand was cracking, flakes of white falling away to reveal something black underneath, something that pulsed faintly like a heart. Her fingers dug into my cheek, not with pain, but with intent, as though she was trying to peel me open. The doll shifted on the bed, its tiny head nodding slowly, approvingly. The double leaned in, her breath damp against my ear. This time, I understood the words. She whispered, "Give me the rest." My body stiffened, my vision tunneling. But before I could pull away, the room itself seemed to shudder, our walls trembling as if something massive was breathing just outside. The mirror across the room rippled like water, and I saw us both reflected in it, but the reflection was wrong. In the glass, she was whole, perfect, flawless, and I was the broken one, cracked and fading. I saw lines splitting across my skin, as though my body was nothing but porcelain ready to shatter. I stumbled forward, desperate to smash the mirror, but she caught my wrist with inhuman strength. Her mouth opened wider, far wider than any human mouth should, and the sound that came out wasn't a scream or a laugh. It was the sound of glass splintering, of 1,000 tiny cracks spreading all at once. The mirror split into pieces. Shards fallen to the floor in slow motion, each one reflecting my face, and hers, and the doll, all blending together in a single, endless grin. The moment the glass touched the floor, everything went black. The silence was absolute, pressing into me from every side. And yet, in that suffocating void, I felt her presence still beside me, her hand gripping mine. When sight returned, we were no longer in the bedroom. We were somewhere else, somewhere the doll had been leading me all along. The house would not stay still. Each door led to a different place. My kitchen became a morgue, my living room an abandoned church. I ran through corridors that changed behind me, twisting like intestines. The doll was always there, perched in every room, watching, smiling, guiding me deeper into the nightmare. The first time I turned the handle, I expected to see the dining room. Instead, I stepped into a room lined with cold steel tables, each one holding a body covered in a sheet. The smell hit me before my mind could register what I was seeing. Sour, metallic, the sting of chemicals used to preserve what was already long dead. I backed out in horror, slammed the door, and opened it again, praying it had been a mistake. But now, it wasn't the morgue. It was a church. The pews crooked and splintered, the crucifix on the wall twisted into a grotesque grin. The walls breathed. I could see them shift and pulse, stretching outward before snapping back in. Doors appeared where none had been before, closing again the second I turned my head. The house didn't want me to escape. It wanted to keep me moving, deeper and deeper into its maze. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it echo through the air, blending with the faint creak of floorboards that followed me wherever I went. I stumbled into the kitchen next, or at least what looked like my kitchen. But the fridge was rotting, dripping with thick black sludge, and the cupboards were filled not with plates or bowls, but with jars. Inside each jar floated an eye, hundreds of eyes, rolling gently as though they had just turned to look at me. I shut the cupboard door quickly, but when I opened another, the doll was sitting there among the jars, her porcelain smile smeared with something red. I ran, pushing through another door, and this time the house shifted violently around me. The walls bent like soft clay, and I was thrown into what should have been the living room, only it wasn't. The carpet was soaked through with dark water, and shapes writhed just beneath the surface, slithering back and forth like eels. The TV clicked on by itself, screen filled with static. Then the static shifted, and there I was, standing in that very room, watching myself from the television's glow. I screamed at the image, begging it to move, to do anything different, but it only mirrored me perfectly, every motion a half second too slow, as though the house was mocking me. I threw a vase at the screen, shattering it into sparks and smoke, but when I turned around, the doll was perched on the sofa, swinging her legs. She wasn't laughing, but the silence around her was worse than laughter. The ceiling above me groaned, then split. Chunks of plaster rained down and through the cracks. I saw something moving between the beams, pale hands, dozens of them, reaching through the gaps, clawing at the air like they were trying to tear the room open. I pressed myself against the wall, but the wall itself melted away, leaving only another door. I had no choice but to go through. This time I found myself in a hallway I didn't recognize. The walls were made of mirrors, stretching on endlessly. Every reflection showed me, but not as I was. Each mirror presented a different version. One where I had no eyes, another where my skin sagged like melting wax, another where I was nothing more than a hollow shell filled with crawling insects. My knees buckled under the weight of it, but the reflections leaned closer, pressing their hands against the glass as if they could break free. I closed my eyes and ran blindly, but when I opened them, I was in my bedroom again. For a moment, relief washed over me, until I noticed the details were wrong. The furniture was all in reverse, mirrored like a photograph turned inside out, and sitting in the corner, where my desk should have been, was the doll. She had grown taller now, her legs long enough to dangle all the way to the floor, her head brushing against the ceiling. Her porcelain face was cracked in more places, as though she had been dropped from a great height, but her smile remained untouched. She lifted one finger and beckoned me forward. Against every instinct, I stepped closer, my feet moving without permission. The pull of her presence, stronger than gravity itself. The air buzzed in my ears, and my vision swam as the room seemed to spin around me. Walls collapsing inward like a throat swallowing me whole. I tried to stop. I begged myself to stop. But the house had already decided my path. Every door was hers. Every room belonged to her. And the further I walked, the more I realized there would be no end, no escape. The house itself had become the doll, and I was just another piece of furniture waiting to be swallowed. I burst through a door and found myself in a forest. Trees towered above, their branches clawing the sky. The moon was wrong, too close, too red. Every tree trunk had faces carved into it, screaming faces. And the further I walked, the louder the whispers became. The doll dangled from a tree branch like a hanged child. When its head turned, every face on the trees turned with it. The air in the forest was heavy, thick with the dampness that clung to my skin. Each breath felt like I was swallowing ash, my throat burning as though the atmosphere itself wanted me silent. The soil was soft and wet, sucking at my shoes with each step. I kept hearing the crunch of leaves behind me, but whenever I turned, nothing was there except the endless rows of trees, each one watching with hollow, carved eyes. The moonlight filtered down in shards, slicing through the branches like broken glass. Every patch of light seemed to move when I wasn't looking, as though the forest itself was alive, shifting its limbs to herd me deeper into its core. The carved faces in the bark twisted slowly when the shadows touched them, their mouths opening wider, exposing rows of splintered wood shaped like teeth. A sound broke the silence, faint at first, like the tinkling of a music box. I froze. The melody was off, notes dragging too long, others cut short, as if a child was trying to remember a song it hadn't fully learned. The sound drew me forward, though my legs resisted, and then I saw her again. The doll dangled from a thick branch, a noose of vines tied around her neck. She should have been still, lifeless, but her head twitched side to side, cracking with each movement. The carved faces on the surrounding trees shifted in unison, all their mouths opening at once. From them came a low hum, vibrating through the earth, rattling my bones. I covered my ears, but the sound was inside me, not outside. The doll's head rotated further, almost all the way around, and when her cracked eye met mine, the humming stopped abruptly, leaving a silence so deep it felt like the forest was holding its breath. I dared to take a step closer, but the ground moved beneath me. Roots shot upward like skeletal hands, wrapping around my ankles. I struggled, clawing at the vines, but they tightened, pulling me down into the earth. The soil opened like a mouth, damp and cold, swallowing me inch by inch. The faces in the trees leaned closer, wood groaning as they bent toward me, their hollow eyes dripping black sap that burned when it touched my skin. The doll dropped from the branch, landing gently on the ground, her porcelain body unbroken. She walked toward me, small steps perfectly balanced, her head still tilted at that unnatural angle. In her tiny hand was something sharp, a shard of glass, glowing faintly in the red moonlight. She crouched by my trapped body, pressing the shard against the vines as if to cut me free. But instead of slicing the roots, she dragged it across my arm. The cut didn't bleed red. What oozed out was thick and black, steaming in the cold air. The doll tilted her head further, examining it, fascinated. She dipped her tiny fingers into the wound and then raised them to her painted lips, smearing the black substance across her smile. I screamed, the sound ripping through the forest, but it only echoed back to me, distorted, as if the forest itself had repeated it in a deeper voice. The roots released suddenly, and I collapsed onto the wet earth, gasping. When I looked up, the trees had shifted again. The path I had come from was gone. Now there was only a tunnel of twisted trunks, branches bending inward like ribs forming a cage. At the far end, glowing faintly, was a figure. Not the doll this time, something taller, cloaked in shadows, waiting. The doll scurried toward it, her tiny body disappearing into the darkness without hesitation. I forced myself up and stumbled after her, my legs weak and trembling. The whispers started again, louder now, overlapping voices, chanting words that scraped against my ears. The carved faces laughed, though no sound came from their mouths. It was inside me, vibrating in my skull. I ran, though the path seemed endless, the figure at the end never getting closer. Every time I blinked, the doll appeared just ahead of me, turning back to watch, her cracked eye shining like a star in the suffocating dark. Then the forest ended, as abruptly as it had begun. One step, I was among the trees. The next, I was standing on cold stone. I gasped, spinning around, but the forest was gone. In its place stretched iron tracks, stretching into a fog so thick I could barely see more than a few feet ahead. And from somewhere in that fog came the sound of a whistle, low, ancient, and hungry. The forest ended at an empty train station. Rusted tracks, no trains in sight. The doll sat on a bench, her legs swinging like a child, waiting for someone. Then I heard it, a train in the distance. But when it arrived, its windows were filled with people. Faceless passengers, pressing their heads against the glass. Their hands reached out, begging me to join them. The doll's finger pointed at the open carriage door, waiting. The platform stretched on both sides, swallowed by the fog, its lamps flickering with a dull yellow glow that cast more shadow than light. The benches were cracked, their wooden slats warped and broken. But the doll sat perfectly balanced, swinging her legs, as if she had been waiting for me all along. Her porcelain feet tapped against a stone in a slow rhythm, like a metronome, counting down to something inevitable. The whistle grew louder, shaking the ground beneath me. The iron tracks vibrated, groaning under the weight of what approached. Out of the fog emerged a train, massive and old, its surface blackened with soot, its windows glowing faintly. It screeched to a halt, sparks raining from the wheels, but the air was wrong. There was no smoke, no heat. The engine exhaled only a freezing mist, curling around my ankles like hands. When I looked at the windows, I wished I hadn't. Faces pressed against the glass, but they weren't really faces. They were smooth and pale, featureless ovals, stretching and distorting as if trying to shape themselves into something recognizable. Fingers slammed against the glass from inside, leaving greasy streaks, nails dragging as though the passengers were desperate to claw their way out. The door opened with a groan that echoed across the empty station. A staircase unfolded onto the platform, and the smell of rust and decay spilled out. The doll raised her tiny hand and pointed at the entrance. The way she moved was almost playful, as if inviting me onto a carnival ride rather than a machine filled with horrors. My body refused to step forward, but my mind wavered, pulled by something beyond my control. The silence was broken by a single sound. A voice, faint, familiar, came from the train, muffled but clear enough to make my blood run cold. It was my mother's voice, calling my name the way she used to when I was a child, soft and warm. For one terrible moment, I believed she was really in there, waiting for me. My legs twitched forward, drawn like a puppet's. I stepped closer, and the faceless figures inside pressed harder against the glass, their heads tilted in unison, their blank features straining as if they were trying to mimic a smile. One raised a hand, palm outstretched, and when it pressed against the window, a faint impression of eyes and a mouth rippled into place. It was my own face staring back at me. The air grew colder the nearer I came to the open door. Frost spread across the platform tiles, cracking them as it climbed toward my feet. The doll hopped down from the bench and walked toward the train, moved easily, untouched by the cold, her small body illuminated by the glow of the carriage. She turned once to look at me, her cracked eye shimmering, then climbed the steps into the dark interior without hesitation. The voice called again, louder this time, and I couldn't ignore it. My name rolled out of the carriage, layered with echoes, as though many voices were saying it at once. I reached the bottom step, my hand brushing the cold steel rail. It was slick, almost wet, and when I pulled my hand away, my skin stung as if something had bitten me. Inside, the glow pulsed like a heartbeat. I could hear movement, shuffling, dragging, breathing. The faceless passengers had turned toward the door, their heads moving in jerky, unnatural motions. They were waiting for me. They wanted me. And deep within that crowd, I swore I saw her again. Not the doll, but the figure from my dreams, the shadow that had always been just out of reach. The whistle blew once more, deafening, vibrating through my chest. The sound felt alive, not like metal, but like a scream stretched too long, too deep. My knees buckled, and I clung to the railing, staring into the open maw of the train. I knew the moment I stepped inside, there would be no coming back. Yet the doll's voice, high and childlike, whispered from within, beckoning me forward with words I couldn't resist. Time to go home. The train doors led not to a carriage, but to my basement. Dark, damp, I smelled earth and rot, and then I heard it. Slow, heavy footsteps. Something was coming from the shadows, taller than any man, a figure without a face. The doll sat on the steps, rocking back and forth like a child watching a play. The faceless thing stretched its arms toward me. It didn't want to kill me, it wanted to wear me. The air in the basement was thick, almost solid, pressing against my lungs as if it wanted to suffocate me before I could even see what lived there. The steps behind me dissolved, cutting off any path back to the train. I stood ankle-deep in water, the surface rippling with every breath I took. Somewhere in the dark, something dripped steadily, each drop echoing like the ticking of a clock that counted down only for me. The walls were damp stone, but when I placed my hand against one to steady myself, it felt warm, almost fleshy, and I yanked it away in disgust. My fingers came back, stained with a dark smear that reeked of rust and old blood. A low groan rolled through the basement, not from any pipe or beam, but from something alive, something waiting. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, each one striking the ground with a weight that vibrated up my spine. I couldn't see it yet, but I felt it, a presence too massive to ignore, filling the entire space. My body trembled before my mind could even process why. I wasn't supposed to be here. This thing had always been here, and I had wandered into its home. The doll sat on the steps that no longer led anywhere, rocking gently forward and back. Her hands rested neatly in her lap, her cracked smile brighter in the dim light. She didn't look at me. She looked into the shadows where the sound was coming from, as if introducing me to something I should already know. The water rippled ahead of me, spreading outward as if disturbed by an unseen body. Then it stepped forward, taller than any man, its head scraping the beams above. Its face was smooth, pale, and empty, no features except a faint depression where a mouth should have been. Yet I could feel it smiling, not with lips, but with hunger. It raised its arms slowly, stretching them outward like a parent beckoning a child. The air thickened, buzzing faintly, as though every shadow in the room leaned closer. I tried to move, to run, but my legs sank deeper into the water, roots wrapping around my ankles, holding me in place. The faceless figure tilted its head, and though it had no eyes, I knew it was staring directly at me. My skin began to crawl, literally shifting on my bones. A tugging sensation pulled at me from the inside out, as though invisible fingers were plucking threads from my flesh. My reflection appeared in the water below, not whole, but peeling apart piece by piece, layers of me unraveling like paper left in the rain. The figure wanted more than my life. It wanted to crawl inside my skin and wear me like clothing. The doll clapped her tiny hands once, the sharp sound cutting through the silence. The figure froze, head twitching toward her. She tilted her head and then back at me, as if asking whether I would resist or surrender. My heart pounded against my ribs, each beat louder than the last. I wanted to scream, to tear myself free, but no sound would come. Only a thin wheeze, pitiful against the vastness of what loomed before me. The figure stepped closer, its body bending in ways that defied bones. Its chest split open, not with blood, but with threads of shadow spilling out, twisting and writhing like smoke with weight. They reached toward me, brushing against my skin, cold and burning at the same time. I felt them probe along my arms, my throat, searching for the seams in my body. It's the weakest point where they could begin to open me. I closed my eyes, praying to wake, praying to escape, but instead I felt the shadows seep inside, cold fingers crawling beneath my skin. My body convulsed, jerking against the pull, and when I opened my eyes again, the doll was closer. She sat right at my feet, staring up at me, her cracked smile impossibly wide. And in that moment, I realized the truth. She had never wanted to haunt me. She had only wanted to deliver me. I woke up in my bed, my heart racing, my body drenched in sweat. It was only a dream, wasn't it? But when I turned my head, I saw her, the doll, sitting upright on my dresser, her glass eyes fixed on me, and I swear, just before the clock struck midnight again, she blinked.